Salam sejahtera, anda sedang menyaksikan Niaga Awani bersama saya Nina Rozman. Seperti biasa jam ini kami akan bawakan pelbagai rangkuman berita niaga ekonomi dari peringkat tempatan hinggalah ke peringkat antarabangsa. Saya mulakan dengan perkembangan ini terlebih dahulu dengan sejumlah 16 bilion ringgit telah diperuntukkan dan disalurkan ke dalam sektor pertumbuhan tinggi dan bernilai tinggi HGHV di bawah program pengaktifan dan reformasi syarikat berkaitan kerajaan Gear Up setakat suku ketiga 2025. Kementerian Kewangan MOF dalam jawapan bertulis di laman sesawang Parlimen berkata, sektor HGHV yang diperuntukkan adalah seperti semikonduktor dan peralihan tenaga serta inisiatif untuk memperkasa komuniti kurang terlayani dan membangunkan bakat tempatan.
Daripada jumlah itu, 12 bilion ringgit lagi sedang dalam penilaian untuk disalurkan ke dalam pelaburan. Kementerian itu berkata demikian bagi menjawab soalan Senator Azhar Hassan berkenaan jumlah pelaburan yang telah berjaya dikendalikan di bawah program Gear Up sehingga Oktober dan November 2025. Menurut MOF, sejak dilancarkan pada Ogos 2024, 6 syarikat pelaburan berkaitan kerajaan GLIC utama telah memberi komitmen untuk menggerakkan 120 bilion ringgit dalam tempoh 5 tahun bagi sektor HGHV selaras dengan ekonomi madani. Katanya di bawah Gear Up, GLIC sedang giat merancakkan sektor-sektor berteknologi tinggi termasuk dalam ekosistem semikonduktor, peralihan tenaga dan usaha memperkukuh syarikat tempatan serta ekosistem pelaburan negara. Dalam perkembangan lanjut, MOF turut meneliti model dan amalan terbaik negara-negara yang telah melaksanakan harga karbon dengan berkesan seperti Switzerland, Kesatuan Eropah EU dan Kanada dalam rangka mekanisme cukai karbon. Pada masa yang sama, penelitian turut dibuat terhadap pengalaman negara-negara serantau seperti Indonesia, Singapura, Thailand dan Vietnam yang sedang memperkenalkan cukai karbon atau Emission Trading Scheme ETS secara berperingkat. Jelas mereka kajian perbandingan ini penting bagi memastikan struktur cukai karbon Malaysia mengambil kira ekosistem industri tempatan, mengekalkan daya saing ekonomi dan mengurangkan risiko kebocoran karbon. Kementerian itu berkata demikian bagi menjawab soalan Senator Datuk Mustafa Musa berhubung cukai karbon di bawah kerangka percukaian negara yang baru yang dijadual dilaksanakan pada 2026.
Majlis Amanah Rakyat MARA memperuntukkan dana pembiayaan sebanyak 30 juta ringgit kepada usahawan di Perak pada tahun depan bagi membantu mereka memperkukuh perniagaan seterusnya menembusi pasaran antarabangsa. Pengurusi MARA, Dato' Ashraf Wajdi Dusuki berkata pada tahun ini hampir 26 juta ringgit diperuntukkan untuk pembangunan usahawan Bumiputera Negeri Perak meliputi pembiayaan, latihan keusahawanan, sesi pemontaran dan khidmat perunding.
Melalui program khas MARA, Gate to Global, kita membantu segala aspek untuk memastikan mereka bersedia untuk memasuki pasaran antarabangsa. Kerana untuk memasuki pasaran antarabangsa ni mereka kena memenuhi syarat-syarat dan piawaian yang ditetapkan oleh negara-negara tersebut. Dan di situlah sebenarnya MARA membantu melalui projek khas kita Gate to Global. InsyaAllah tahun depan pun kita telah buat keputusan untuk meningkatkan lagi pembiayaan dan juga dana kepada usahawan Perak ni sebanyak 30 juta ringgit.
Melalui MARA Gate to Global GTG, agensi itu membantu segala aspek bagi memastikan usahawan bersedia memasuki pasaran antarabangsa kerana mereka perlu memenuhi piawaian yang ditetapkan setiap negara dan di situlah MARA membantu melalui projek khas GTG. Beliau berkata demikian kepada pemberita selepas merasmikan Majlis Anugerah Usahawan MARA Negeri Perak 2024 hingga 2025 pada Selasa malam. Ashraf Wajdi berkata pihaknya menyasarkan peningkatan sebanyak 30 hingga 40% usahawan terlibat program GTG secara keseluruhan setiap tahun. Beliau berkata ketika ini 37% daripada kira-kira 647,000 usahawan di negara ini adalah Bumiputera dengan 88% daripadanya berstatus mikro.
Gebyar Nusantara 2025 kembali ke TRX KL awal Disember ini. Bukan sekadar pesta makanan dan hiburan tetapi pentas ekonomi kreatif Indonesia dan juga Malaysia. Dari bakso, batik sampai animasi dan permainan digital, festival ini dipasarkan sebagai Flavors of Harmony. Tapi skuad mana sebenarnya impak ekonomi di sebalik jenama itu? Untuk faham apa makna edisi 2.0 kepada pelabur, SME dan bakat kreatif serantau, bersama saya di studio adalah Minister Kaunsil Ekonomi Kedutaan Besar Republik Indonesia di Kuala Lumpur, Hendra P. Iskandar. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Pak Hendra. Apa khabar?
Kabar baik, terima kasih sudah bisa berada di sini juga.
Kita tinggal beberapa hari saja sebelum kita lihat acara ini kita akan melihat kemeriahan acara ini. Mungkin ramai yang melihat Gebyar Nusantara ini sebagai festival fun, sebagai untuk hujung minggu. Tapi pada pandangan Pak Hendra, apakah antara naratif sebenar ekonomi di sebalik edisi kedua ini?
Ya, sebenarnya Gebyar Nusantara ini merupakan ajang promosi. Ajang promosi untuk ekonomi kreatif. Kalau kita berbicara ekonomi kreatif, terdapat 17 subsektor dari ekonomi kreatif, termasuk ada kuliner, ada lagu, ada music, ada movies, ada fashion, architecture, dan lainnya. Ini kita ingin menunjukkan bahwa inilah kekuatan Indonesia sebagai showcasing produk-produk Indonesia untuk bisa masuk pasar Malaysia. Tapi above all this, yang paling utama adalah ini untuk menunjukkan kedekatan kedua negara. Kita seringkali berkata saudara serumpun, kedekatan ini. Apa yang mau diwujudkan? Ya kan? Jadi ini lebih kepada kerjasama di bidang ekonomi kreatif. By having this, kita juga berharap teman-teman dari Malaysia, saudara-saudara kita yang melihat, yang datang, para pebisnis lihat, oh Indonesia sudah punya ini, Indonesia tidak punya ini, bagaimana kita bisa saling mengisi. Ini sebenarnya yang utamanya yang ingin kita lakukan pada Gebyar Nusantara yang kedua kalinya.
Dan satu-satu kita lihat kemeriahan ini ramai yang tidak sabar dan juga excited. Mungkin Pak Hendra kongsikan kalau kita lihat ini adalah antara tujuan ataupun agenda adalah untuk memperkukuhkan kerjasama antara kedua-dua negara Indonesia dan Indonesia dalam konteks industri kreatif, dan kita lihat bukan ada fashion, ada salon, ada pelbagai lagi, ada music. Tetapi kalau kita lihat mungkin Pak Hendra boleh kongsikan apakah antara hasil dan impak dari sesi penganjuran edisi pertama dan apa antara yang menarik daripada edisi pertama tu boleh diteruskan untuk edisi kedua?
Ya, kalau kita melihat pada penyelenggaraan yang pertama itu sekitar 14.000 yang hadir. 14.000 yang hadir. Dari 14.000 itu juga ada pebisnis baik Indonesia maupun Malaysia. Ada beberapa MOUs yang ditandatangani. Ada business matching. Dan sekitar 38% produk dari apa yang dipamerkan masuk ke pasar Malaysia. Dan selebihnya juga ada dari Malaysia yang masuk ke Indonesia. Jadi mereka inilah awal dari para pebisnis melakukan business matching. Namanya business matching, apa yang mereka punya akan disampaikan, apa yang tidak punya mereka akan datangkan. Jadi ini lebih kepada saling melengkapi antara kedua negara. Inilah yang mendorong kita untuk melihat perlunya menyelenggarakan kembali di penghujung tahun ini tentunya dengan sedikit konsep yang lebih meriah dan berbeda.
Dan untuk saling melengkapi itu tidak mudah kerana kita tahu setiap individu dan setiap negara juga mempunyai pendekatannya tersendiri. Dan Malaysia dan Indonesia kita dapat lihat ia berkongsi antara bahasa, budaya, selera. Tetapi kerjasama kreatif dan ekonomi ini kadang-kadang ia seperti terperangkap dalam zon selesa. Jadi apa yang boleh dilakukan oleh kedua-dua negara ini, Kedutaan Besar Indonesia dan juga Malaysia untuk mengukuhkan lagi hubungan kreatif dan ekonomi kedua-dua negara ini bergerak ke hadapan. Apa antara strategi yang boleh kita tingkatkan lagi saling melengkapi itu?
Ya, sebenarnya kalau kita melihat justru dari window ekonomi kreatif, di sinilah banyak hal yang kecil-kecil yang mungkin selama ini tidak terlihat. Mungkin kalau orang langsung melihat apa yang bisa diperdagangkan antara kedua negara, masih berpikir. Tapi kalau melihat ekonomi kreatif, orang tiap hari ini orang melakukan ekonomi kreatif. Ya kan, dari mulai termasuk membuat sablon untuk kaos, untuk tangki bensin dan lain-lain, ini bisa dilakukan. Nah, ini yang kita inginkan jadikan contoh. Congratulations kepada Malaysia yang kemarin selama setahun sudah berhasil menjadi keketuaan ASEAN. Di dalam ASEAN juga kita ada satu amanah yang perlu dilaksanakan adalah bagaimana meningkatkan integrasi perdagangan antar negara-negara ASEAN. Nah, ini yang perlu kita dorong. Kita ingin Indonesia Malaysia ini dapat dijadikan sebagai contoh, ya kan? Perdagangannya meliputi yang lebih luas lagi, termasuk dari hal-hal yang sangat luas yang 17 subsektor tadi dalam ekonomi kreatif. Inilah yang menjadi this is the essence of what we are doing between the two countries.
Dan saya suka apa Pak Hendra kongsikan bahawa kita bukan sahaja untuk tingkatkan integrasi kerjasama antara kedua-dua negara, tetapi kita boleh menjadi contoh untuk negara-negara ASEAN yang lain dalam mengintegrasikan sektor perdagangan. Dan kalau kita lihat edisi kali ini, seperti yang boleh saya kongsikan, melihat pelibatan beberapa sektor strategi ekonomi seperti industri kesihatan, perbankan dan pelancongan. Mungkin Pak Hendra boleh kongsikan apakah antara strategi berkenaan antara kedua-dua sektor ini?
Ya, kalau kita melihat kan pariwisata sekarang ini yang paling sangat-sangat erat ya, sangat-sangat penting untuk dilakukan. Sebagai contoh, sejak tahun 2023 itu pelancong atau wisatawan Malaysia menduduki ranking pertama untuk datang ke Indonesia, ya kan? Untuk datang sampai dengan tahun ini. Untuk terus datang di Indonesia, kita juga perlu melihat apa yang diperlukan, apa yang sih sebenarnya yang diinginkan oleh turis Malaysia. Kenapa sih turis Malaysia senang ke Indonesia? Jakarta, Bandung. Kemarin saya baru kembali dari Jakarta, itu satu flight itu mungkin 80% isinya orang Malaysia, dan dia yang dibicarakan adalah ke Jakarta, habis itu ke Bandung naik bus, habis itu belanja kain. Nah, ini harus kita tangkap. Sebaliknya nanti juga demikian. Kalau kita over the weekend, over the long weekend, jalanlah kita ke Bukit Bintang. Itu saya hanya mendengar orang bercakap bahasa Indonesia, gitu kan. Jadi ini suatu kekuatan utama. Pariwisata atau pelancongan akan menciptakan daya tumbuh untuk ekonomi, ekonomi kerakyatan. Ini kalau ini sudah jalan, ekonomi kita yang apalagi di Malaysia yang gencar disampaikan ekonomi madani, ini bisa jalan. Kembali lagi, ini akan menjadi contoh yang baik, ya kan? Indonesia ini saudara serumpun sama Malaysia, bicaranya sama, adat istiadat sama, ya kan? Kalau ini saja tidak bisa dilakukan secara maksimum, bagaimana dengan yang lain yang berbeda? Jadi makanya saya tidak capek-capeknya dengan teman-teman dari Malaysia, ayo kita lakukan apa sih yang dari sekecil apapun kita bisa lakukan ini perkongsiannya antara Indonesia dan Malaysia.
Yang penting itu adalah usaha itu ya. Dan mungkin boleh kongsikan, tadi ada kongsi mengenai pelibatan antara sektor-sektor baharu seperti industri kesihatan, perbankan dan pelancongan ini. Mungkin Pak Hendra boleh kongsikan bagaimana, adakah kita akan menjangkakan lebih banyak memorandum ataupun kerjasama akan ditandatangani selepas ini untuk edisi kedua?
Ya, betul. Jadi untuk sektor kesehatan kan memang kita hadirkan. Selama ini kan sudah it is no doubt ya bahwa untuk kesehatan ini sekarang orang-orang Indonesia perginya kemana? Ke Malaysia ya kan, ke Penang, ke Malaka, even ke Kuala Lumpur dengan medical tourism gitu. Tapi ternyata teman-teman dari Malaysia juga ingin, Pak, bagaimana dengan wellness center? Pak, traditional tourism, traditional medical tourism, ini yang mau kita kerjasamakan. Beberapa rumah sakit rumah sakit Malaysia sudah mulai investasi di Indonesia. Ingin juga mereka membangun suatu jaringan rumah sakit tanpa harus datang. Mungkin tidak semua orang di Indonesia dia mampu untuk datang ke Malaysia, tapi juga menginginkan standar dari kerjasama kerjasama di bidang kesehatan dengan rumah sakit Malaysia. Makanya ini juga kita dorong investasi Malaysia di bidang kesehatan dan rumah sakit. Ini memang hal yang baru, tapi percaya ini bisa akan kita dorong dalam konteks yang lebih unik, tidak terlalu kaku sehingga ini bisa terjadi.
Dan Pak Hendra, apa lagi quick wins ataupun low hanging fruits yang boleh dilakukan dalam memperkasakan lagi hubungan antara Malaysia dan juga Indonesia, terutamanya dalam konteks ataupun industri kreatif?
Musik, film, kita lagi sudah berbicara mengenai dengan teman-teman mengenai berbicara untuk membuat suatu film yang di luar dari konteks film-film biasa, seperti biasa mengangkat tema percintaan itu udah pasti, tapi dalam film itu akan mengambil spot-spot wisata yang ada di Malaysia maupun di Indonesia, ya kan, makanannya. Ini kalau sudah terbentuk ekonomi kita ini jujur saja, at the end of this promotion semuanya baik Malaysia dan Indonesia adalah bagaimana mendorong perekonomian bangsa dan negara ke masyarakat untuk naik.
Dan apa Pak Hendra boleh katakan untuk tetamu yang akan hadir hujung minggu ini? Mungkin tidak pernah datang, tapi ini pertama kali untuk datang. Bagaimana untuk kita mengajak mereka untuk hadir bersama-sama?
Ya, saya berharap teman-teman Malaysia bisa datang bukan saja untuk melihat dan merasakan the taste of Indonesia, the taste of Indonesian products, tapi juga melihat the taste of how warm the relations between Indonesia and Malaysia. Ini terkadang kita sudah tidak tahu lagi ini mana Malaysia, ini mana orang Indonesia, gitu kan, siapa orang Malaysia lebih menyukai dan lebih tahu mengenai makanan Indonesia dibanding saya, gitu kan. Jadi saya lebih tahu ya kan mengenai sate Malaysia. Inilah this is what we call like the team ya, the harmony that we are going to build. Jadi jom datang sama-sama, rame-rame, kita datang, kita menikmati bersama kedekatan Indonesia Malaysia.
Okey. Akhir sekali, Pak Hendra, mungkin boleh kongsikan, kita sudah melihat apa yang kita boleh jangkakan untuk acara pada hujung minggu ini, Gebyar Nusantara, edisi kedua, pelbagai memorandum, pelbagai perniagaan yang akan ada sana, music festival. Kita boleh katakan ini adalah Festival Fund. Mungkin boleh kongsikan bagaimanakah antara unjuran ataupun trajektori ekonomi industri untuk tempoh jangka panjang lebih daripada 5 tahun ini ataupun dalam 10 tahun. Bagaimana Pak Hendra melihat gambaran industri kreatif antara Malaysia dan juga Indonesia berkembang?
Ya, ini memang akan kita dorong. Potensi dari industri kreatif kedua negara sangat-sangat besar dan ini perlu terus didorong untuk meningkatkan pertumbuhan ekonomi yang positif. Ya, untuk 5 tahun ke depan dengan kita proyeksikan di atas 5%. Ya, jadi justru industri kreatif inilah yang sebenarnya wajib untuk masuk mendorong perekonomian Indonesia maupun Malaysia. Kalau kita lihat sekarang masih less than 30%, ya, ini at least sebenarnya apalagi di Indonesia paling tidak 30% sudah bisa harus menguasai perekonomian nasional. Jadi ini akan kita dorong terus dan kita tidak akan henti-hentinya kedua negara untuk mencari lagi apalagi dari ke-17 sektor ini yang bisa kita kembangkan.
Tapi bila Pak Hendra kongsikan ni, saya baru teringat antara satu jenama yang sangat popular di Malaysia iaitu kenangan kopi. Dan kalau kita lihat gastronomi, kopi kenangan antara contoh yang menarik daripada jualan kopi kepada sebuah unicorn. Jadi bagaimana perkongsian daripada segi kemahiran perniagaan dapat diperluaskan sambil belajar? Ya,
ini kan kalau kita punya kenangan kopi ya, jadi biasa dalam dunia itu apa yang kita punya kita melihat yang lain lebih bagus, apa yang kita tidak punya demikian. Sekarang kenangan kopi sudah masuk lama dan sebentar lagi kita juga akan, saya bisa menikmati Zeus Coffee mungkin di Jalan Jenderal Sudirman di Jakarta, ya itu kan. Jadi inilah saling melengkapi tadi yang saya sampaikan, karena kalau kita bicara F&B kita bicara mengenai taste, kita tidak bisa paksakan taste dari masing-masing individu. Jadi sebentar lagi kita akan lihat animasinya si Juki ada di sini, lalu kehadiran video. Ya, video itu sebagai apa? Untuk live streaming untuk sinetron Indonesia yang di sini banyak penggemarnya, kita kongsikan dengan Unify. Jadi di sini kita benar-benar apa yang kita suguhkan adalah suatu kerjasama. Dan saya juga percaya nanti tadi saya sudah bicara juga, kita bikin juga acara, kita lihat apa yang bisa kita angkat. Why not? Astro AWANI kita bisa tampilkan, ya kan? Kita bisa sama-sama kerjasama untuk mengangkat suatu keunikan dari Indonesia Malaysia yang bisa didorong ke dalam suatu usaha yang saya menguntungkan.
So, kita boleh mengangkat perbincangan yang begitu penting antara kedua-dua negara untuk perbincangan ini adalah untuk memahami dan mengenali apa lagi yang boleh kita lakukan, apa yang boleh dipertingkatkan antara kedua-dua negara. Dan saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada Pak Hendra, Minister Kaunsil Ekonomi Kedutaan Besar Republik Indonesia di Kuala Lumpur. Dan kita lihat Gebyar Nusantara 2025 kembali ke Raintree Plaza di Action TRX Kuala Lumpur pada 6 hingga 7 Disember 2025 menonjolkan kekuatan ekonomi Indonesia daripada pelbagai aspek seperti kulinera, fashion, animasi, komik hinggalah permainan digital. Dan sekian saja perkongsian pada kali ini dan kita akan teruskan perkembangan seterusnya selepas kita berhenti rehat.
Herbal Essences melembutkan dan menyilatkan semula rambut anda dengan 100% pati tumbuhan sebenar seperti minyak argan dan aloe. Menutrisi secara mendalam untuk rambut lembut dan berkilat semula. Bebas daripada paraben, parafin dan pewarna. Herbal Essences.
Kini anda boleh stream hiburan tanpa henti dan Netflix hits dengan Astro One.
Mungkin ini permulaan terbaik untuk kopi kedua.
Kau tak payah nak berlakon dah. Get it together. 빨리 가야 돼. 내가 어떻게 혼자 가요?
나한테 유혹당했거든.
She will be mine.
Today we fight for our future!
This thing, it ties us together forever.
Dapatkan Astro One Entertainment dan Netflix pada harga istimewa di aplikasi My Astro sekarang.
Kerajaan Negeri Selangor akan melancarkan program pemberian vaksin influenza secara percuma di 4 daerah yang mencatatkan kadar jangkitan tertinggi. Pemilik atau pemandu kenderaan asing khususnya dari Singapura yang gagal memiliki atau mengaktifkan permit kemasukan kenderaan VEP tidak dibenar keluar Malaysia selagi tidak membayar saman. Kekerapan gangguan perkhidmatan aerotrain di lapangan terbang antarabangsa Kuala Lumpur KLIA tidak boleh diterima.
Many people, it's kind of hard to understand. Men in prison doing cruelty, no, that is a no-no. But when you're doing it for a meaningful cause, for a purpose of being able to provide the services for the men that are dying, why not? It is a humanitarian cause. My 17 years of being a hospice volunteer, I never knew that life was so important that here you're talking to someone today and they're gone tomorrow. And we're talking about some men that I've known and men that I figuratively grew up with in prison. It helped me to appreciate life, knowing that what I was doing, I was providing for the men that was terminally ill, men that at any given day will pass, men that I would never see again in life.
Welcome to Meet the Leader. I'm Katerina Gordichuk, and I'm introducing you to Gary Tyler, who's a fiber artist for social justice. Hi, Gary.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. You have such a remarkable story, and we're so lucky to have you here in the studio with us. How do you even start describing your life journey and what got you here?
You know, I've been asked that question many times, and I've answered it in many different ways because it's not one way that you can answer, especially when it's so traumatic. But what I do in turn is that I just try to get people to understand that despite my ordeal, I was able to overcome it. And through art, that was one of the things that I was able to mirror my experience to give people, you could say, an understanding of what I went through. And this basically was born out of me being able to take care of terminally ill men in prison. It all started off by making quilts for the patient. And when the patient passed, we passed it on to their family, you know, as sentimental values, because this is something that kept their loved one warm. And as time went on, it was a thing about what could we do to raise funds for the program, to be able to, you know, purchase the necessary things that men in prison is not necessarily afforded. So we started doing that, making quilts to sell and to buy things, and also the funds that we raised from quilting, it enabled the program to finance the trips and the flights, as well as paying for hotel expenses for family members that was out of state. And it became rewarding. So that itself was kind of like catapulted me into art.
You were 17 when you were sentenced to death and commuted to life. At what point during your 40 years in prison did you turn to art?
Well, you know, it's ironic that when I was first brought to death row, one of the guys that was on the tier, he was in his cell, and he was putting, you could say, jewelry boxes, picture frames together with matchsticks. And I noticed that, and to me it was kind of like, wow, this is what this guy do, you know, for his pastime. But it became an art for him. This is something that he was making for his loved ones when they visit. More so when he was getting cigarette tobaccos, you know, packaged and making picture frames and, you know, and jewelry boxes. That drew my interest, and I wanted to get it, you know, I wanted to notice, you know, because also it was a thing about you being in a 6x9 cell, what it is that you're going to do. Read books, concentrate, you understand, and grieve in your, in your demise. No, I wanted something to keep me preoccupied. And that was something that I did, even though it didn't cure, you understand, the situation as a whole, but it gave me something to focus on. And later on, that itself helped me to transition into doing art, mainly the quilts for hospice.
Why quilting? Why is this is that specific artwork that you chose?
Well, let me tell you, it wasn't easy, all right? It was something that I was literally, I would say, coerced by friends, you know, that they needed help. And I kind of like shunned away from it because quilting to me in the men's prison was something feminine. And I didn't want to be associated with that. But by knowing that I was a hospice volunteer and these guys needed help, I kind of like relented and started helping them. And next thing you know, I was sold on it. And I started doing quilting, you understand, and it became a passion of mine.
What do you think convinced you about it? Because that is such a dramatic change, right, for you?
Well, you know what's so amazing about quilting is that it's the finished product. That you get material and you match it and you put it together and it draws pictures, all kind of pictures, depending on what vision and frame of mind that you want your quilt to come out. And by me being a graphic art graduate, I utilize applique into quilting. And you know, in which case, you know, I didn't know that it was gonna apply, but when it did work, that kind of like, I mean, it sent me out there that I wanted to do more. I wanted to do the impossible while being a quilter. You understand? And then it was in my DNA because my grandmother, she was a quilter. And my mother, she was a seamstress. My mother made clothing for her and my sisters, you understand, out of the old J.C. Penney's and Sears catalog where they had these patterns. And she used to make that, but you know, as a kid, you don't pay much attention to that. But as I reflect back on my grandmother sitting at the sewing machine, it was one of those old-fashioned Sears sewing machine that you paddle. You understand? And keep it going. So, you know, I had this kind of like flashback, and I realized this is in your DNA. This part of your family history. So I really began to embrace it, knowing that it's a tradition that need to be carried on by generations. But of course, why me as a man? You know, many people, it is kind of hard to understand men in prison doing quilting. No, that is a no-no. But when you're doing it for a meaningful cause, for a purpose of being able to provide the services for the men that are dying, men that you know that could subject of leaving anytime, why not? It is a humanitarian cause.
It might be a bit sentimental of me, Gary, but it makes me feel as though that quilting connected you back to your family, right?
Yes,
while you were in prison.
It did, most definitely. It helped me, you know, it helped me to appreciate life, knowing that what I was doing, I was providing for the men that was terminally ill, men that at any given day will pass, men that I would never see again in life. And we're talking about some men that I've known and men that I figuratively grew up with in prison. So yes, you know, it's something that I find myself embracing and feel that you can tell stories. You can be able to relate to the world and let people know that, you know, art is beautiful, especially when you're doing quilting.
Gary, do you remember one of the first maybe pieces that you felt really proud of that you made?
Well, it was the first piece, you know, having to be able to have the liberty of doing something that you wanted to do. You know, you saw the guys that working around you doing their individualized pieces and having to sit there and contemplate what it is that you wanted to do, and sitting there and meticulously cutting the pieces out and matching the colors and putting it together. Oh yes, the first one was, you know, I mean, to me it was my best piece. But even though it was the beginning, you know, but it also gave me an appreciation of knowing that this is something that that can be rewarding, you know, and yes, it was my first piece. Yep, and it was made of windmills and hearts.
You said that you started quilting originally because your friends convinced you to.
Yeah.
And it was to help them, and you felt like it really helped their trauma and it helped to save their life.
Mm-hmm.
So that was already for you such a big tool for social justice then.
Yes, we're talking about men, and what's so depressing about it is that my 17 years of being a hospice volunteer, I never knew that life was so important, that here you're talking to someone today and they're gone tomorrow. And through the process, you get to know the individual family and how much they love their loved one. And then having to be there when the individual expires, you know, and knowing that where's the mercy, where's the forgiveness in a criminal justice system where this individual could have been, you could say, medically paroled to his family, where he'd been able to spend his time, at least his remaining days, with his loved ones, you know, or giving an individual a second chance. And that's something that the criminal justice system failed. If you say that you're about justice, then you should have mercy for those that are not able to fend for themselves or speak for themselves.
Gary, as I was thinking about your quilts, a lot of them have been made when you were incarcerated, but now they're displayed all over the world. How does it make you feel to see them all around? And how do your quilts affect people?
Well, that wasn't my intended purpose from the beginning. As time went on and being encouraged by others saying, man, that people love your artwork and you good at this. You know, it kind of like gave me a pat on the back that I was doing something that was quite meaningful. I never knew that many years later that the quilts that I you know, was instrumental in making, that these quilts would find their way in museums. I never knew that, you know, one of the quilts that we made that would be in an African-American museum. But when it was told to me, I felt it was a great accomplishment because, you know, it exemplifies the heart and soul of those of us that was, you know, incarcerated. You know, so it gave me a sense of pride knowing that I was on the right path, that I was giving back, and that I was helping to expose the injustices and unfairness of the criminal justice system.
You've had such a difficult life, and yet you speak with such inspiration, and you don't seem angry about what happened to you. How has art helped you in this process?
Well, you know, many people say, why are you not bitter? How did you survive this? You know, you never know what you're capable of doing, well, unless you're in a situation where you're being forced to make decisions on a daily basis. Do you want to live, or do you want to become a victim of the turmoil and violence of the prison life? And I went through my transition. I was bitter. I was, you know, became resentful. I became very, you know, disappointed in what had happened to me. If, you know, I was young, I was going through my, you know, you could say, this transition as a young man. But as time passed, I realized that there had to be some self-reckoning, because if I want to move forward, then I'm going to have to first start forgiving myself by allowing myself to capitulate and falling, you know, mentally victim to the system itself. And then reach outward of forgiving the ones who was, who was forced to testify against me in court. So once I went through that transition and I realized that fork in the road and by the suffering that I went through, it gave me the ability to make the right decision in my life.
What kind of lessons would you have for people who have not had your experience? How do you persevere? How do you stay strong? And as you said, make these decisions when you're forced to make them every single day.
Well, I would like to emphasize to our community, whether it's local, national, or international, that the people that we know, that we meet, that we went to school with, no one is perfect. And if someone find themselves on the other side, you could say, of the law, doesn't necessarily make them a bad person. We should always remember those individuals that's in prison are members of our community. They are family members of people that we know, if not our own family members. And we should never forsake them. We should never, you could say, turn deaf ear on those who reaching out for help. Let's try to help to rehabilitate and make this individual whole, where this person could be, where they can contribute back to our community. But if we isolate them and ignore them and try to make it as though they no longer exist, it works against society when that happens, because that individual one day may be released from prison, but you would want that person to be released who's willing to give back to the community, who recognize the wrong things that he had did in his community, and we understand and work to try to make things right, not sit back and spite the individual, where when a person is finally released, he feel vindictive, he feel hateful about society. No, I feel that society have failed our community, and the failure of our community breeds such, such criminality and disappointment, where people are forced to do the things that they're doing. So society must take accountability, especially the criminal justice system, because you can't make one hat fit all, because one hat doesn't fit all. Everybody change, and everybody should be given a second chance at life.
So taking responsibility as citizens in our societies.
Taking responsibility.
What is a piece of advice that you've been grateful for that has helped you through these years?
Never give up. Persevere despite the challenges. And remember, just because you're in prison doesn't mean that it diminishes the possibilities that you can make a difference in your community. And they always say that service to humanity is the best work of life. And Earth's greatest treasure lies in human personality.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you.
That was Gary Tyler, fiber artist for social justice. For more episodes of Meet the Leader, go to the World Economic Forum's YouTube page or wef.ch/podcast.
6 Disember ini, bersedia untuk Kita Run Fest 2025. Lebih daripada sekadar larian, ianya demi kebaikan. Jom lakukan yang terbaik untuk alam sekitar. Sertai kami bersama keluarga dan rakan-rakan. Alami pelbagai aktiviti menarik. Daftar sekarang, pelanggan Astro. Nikmati diskaun 20% dengan Astro Rewards. 6 Disember ini, jumpa anda di Kita Run Fest.
When the superpowers move, the ground shifts. Power isn't just about might anymore. It's about narratives, networks, negotiation. We go beyond the noise to deliver laser-focused analysis on how power moves and what it means for the world. This is AWANI International, reporting the shifts in power affairs shaping the world.
Mereka telah buktikan kemampuan vokal.
Keterbukaan anda untuk mencoba, saya appreciate. Jangan cepat puas.
Harmoni, cantik. Saya mesti lihat kamu menyanyi di luar genre pemula.
Siapakah yang akan melangkah ke pentas seterusnya dan benar-benar menonjol? Gegar Vaganza 2025, Ahad 9 malam di Astro Ria dan Astro Go.
Thanks for joining us. This is The Economy. Very recently, an economist has been talking about how the Bumiputra policy is shaping up in the country and why we need to focus a little bit more in terms of the evaluation of the Bumiputra agenda, as well as trying to understand a little bit better in terms of how we can improve it. Joining us online is Professor Emeritus Dr. Barjoyai Bardai, the Provost of the Malaysia University of Science and Technology, or MUST. How are you, Professor? Let's take a deep dive in terms of the two big comments that you've just made recently. We start off with the whole idea of how and why you think that the Bumiputra entrepreneurs have been written off of the policy, of the Bumiputra policy, and how the Bumiputra privileges are actually benefiting the political elite and not necessarily the ordinary Bumiputras. Maybe, Professor, if you can share with us why you think that the NEP, for instance, is benefiting the political elite and not the ordinary person.
Okay, thank you, Ibrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let me begin with the economic situation before independence. Basically, Malaysia was colonized by the British India, and while they were colonizing us, looting our asset, they also did harm by basically ditching a lot of lands to the immigrant then. More than 1 million acres of land, actually, to be exact, about 700,000 hectares. And this has created inequity, a serious inequity, because they are the time they were have less than 5% of the population, and they were controlling majority of the land. And so we live with that, and we progress. Of course, Malaysia has benefited a lot with the rapid development. Our economy has grown from 5 billion before the independence in terms of GDP to become over 1.5 trillion, 300 times. And of course, the poverty has reduced, and the poverty level was over 47, over 80% when we started, and went to 47% in 1970 and so on. But it's still some disparity that we see. And the new economic policy was initiated in 1970 after the clash between the different faction, and that created a concern about we should do something serious to change this, and hence the new economic policy was enacted with the missions of first increasing the wealth of the Bumiputra, income and wealth, and also the education level and so on. And it went very well in education. Before 1970, only less than 5% of Bumiputra were in the public university. Today, actually, we can be proud that over 3 million of Bumiputra graduated from the university. So in terms of education, we have achieved this success, I think, because we were very serious about correcting the education inequity. But the problem is in wealth and income. Actually, we achieved nearly 20% equity by 1990, but that was short of the 30% target that we want. And then in 1990, suddenly the government decided that there's no point continuing with the NEP because there is very little to share and the cake is very small. So we need to work hard to make the cake bigger. Then only we can think about redistribution. And that's when the new economic policy went in. The not the Bumiputra policy, the rapid development policy. And so by 1990, by 2000, year 2000, we really saw that the rapid development of the economy, but that has deteriorated the equity of the Bumiputra. It went down as low as less than 15%. So then we started to go into the micro measurement, seeing what has really happened in the last 30 or 40 years. And we realized that actually the new economic policy has not really benefited the mass or majority of the Bumiputra. It has benefited many of the elite group, the cronies to the ruling party, the government or the politician, and even to a certain extent, we can say that some of the benefit in the education policy or incentive has also benefited this group. And today we are again at the crossroad. Many people think that especially the small and micro businesses, felt that it is useless to think about NEP, and we cannot hold to this dream of getting anything out of NEP. And so they write off NEP from their dictionary, and they are trying to be independent. So this has been a while. I think if we ask many micro businesses, small businesses, Bumiputra, in the past decade or more, they've been actually ignoring NEP. Then they have not mentioned about NEP, never asked about anything from NEP, and they are quite successful. Today, if we go around the country, we can see that Bumiputra micro businesses and small businesses are mushrooming. They are doing well. I mean, actually, we cannot imagine 40 years ago we see a Malay shop in the town. Today, in some town, actually they are even competing well with the non-Malay, for example. So with that background, we see that today we talk about NEP as a threat and deterrent to the rapid economic development because of the tariff agreement and so on. But on the other hand, actually, it has also affected the more successful Bumiputra businesses' reputation because they were accused of holding tight to this NEP promise and hoping that they will make better, for example.
Professor, let's talk a little bit more in terms of the second idea, which is on creating an endowment fund. You were talking about to the press very recently on the National Fund to support Bumiputras and perhaps not just on, say, for instance, relying on governmental aid. Maybe you can share with us this endowment fund idea. And how do you think that this is going to be supporting education of Bumiputra talents, or supporting Bumiputra entrepreneurs, or supporting Bumiputra social enterprises, and of course community work? How do you think, and why do you think we need to have this endowment fund?
Okay, I think for Bumiputra to let go the NEP altogether would be unreasonable. Because it is also stated in the Constitution. So, as a concession, we should try to create a level playing field in the economy. And to create level playing field, we have to correct the damage that has been created before independence by the colonial, and that is to even out the equity shares. And so I was proposing an endowment fund. We create an endowment fund. Essentially, it is a foundation set up, and we will then transfer some of the whatever leftover wealth, the Malay Reserve land, the government land, the state government land, the part of the equity of the GLC, of the State Economic Development Corporation. If we transfer this to this fund will operate like the Norway oil fund, and this is need not be specifically devoted for Bumiputera, but it's for the needy group, and of course, in particular, it's the Bumiputera group, and this fund will be managed well by professional manager, and it can be formed in the form of a wakaf, so that it will be permanently there, because the wakaf principle is stopping the wealth, the asset, and only enjoy the fruits. And so the income from this endowment fund will then be used to assist in various aspects of living, from education, health, and in particular for micro businesses, small businesses, to help them, to support them to grow, to be competitive, because this micro and we have over 1 million micro businesses in Malaysia. All of them are doing well, rather viable, but they are short of capital. They need to be supported so that they can grow and move into the next level.
Professor, let's deep dive into this whole notion of the NEP per se. Taking a step back, do you feel that we need to have a revamped policy on how we can improve the Bumiputera's fate? Or do you feel that for instance, Putra 35, that talks about the economic transformation of Bumiputera 2035 is a good enough document and a good enough blueprint to work on, and perhaps that would be the successor to the NEP? Where do you see the grand scheme of things when it comes to Bumiputera policies?
Yes, it is a good plan, but I think the focus is still on developing individual wealth. And what I'm suggesting is that we develop communal wealth, so that the wealth of the Bumiputera group will be enhanced in the form of a wealth fund, endowment fund, and that will stay there, sustainable. It will be there forever. I mean, until Kiamah, hopefully. And at the same time, we have the benefit from this fund that will help to actually spearhead the initiative to help the micro and the small businesses. Of course, we should go on with the Putra 35. I think it should run in parallel, but this can be the base, because a plan like Putra 35 is too ambitious, and it really needs a full support of the government. And for a moment, I think the government is not ready to do that, because they want to look at themselves as a more they call it the people governments in a sense. Yeah.
Finally, Professor, what are your key takeaways when it comes to the Bumiputera agenda? What are your greatest fears and hopes, and more importantly, wants coming out of this policy?
I think we should look at the Bumiputra initiative in the form of family initiative, no? And I want to actually propose the principle of family wakaf. And in Malaysia, we have been having wakaf for thousands of years. But wakaf in Malaysia was confined to giving away land and properties. But actually, there is a more refined principles of wakaf, which is called the family wakaf, where every family should actually create a wakaf. And this is in the form of saving and investment, where we will contribute into this fund just like a saving fund or investment fund, and it will be managed by the head of the family as the mutawali or the trustee, and it will then grow the wealth with trying to fix the capital there and only enjoy the benefit from the investment. So if we can, for example, couple this with the institution, the investment institution that we have, like KWSP, PNB, we could actually grow investment community within every family. And investment need some discipline. And for example, with the digital economy today, we can always use QR. Every time we make payment, we will allocate 1% into our family wakaf. And so the wakaf will grow. And this wakaf is called family wakaf, and it stays with the family, and the family will be enjoying all the benefit from it until certain time when, for example, the head of the family pass away. They can bring some of it and put it in the general wakaf. So in the sense, we create a new culture against the current culture of the conventional financial system with the financial literacy, which encourages to borrow. We want to promote wakaf literacy with the culture of saving, investment for the eternal. This is maybe quite a big idea to chew, but we should start thinking about it. And already I have received some invitation to start a foundation. So that is a good move. We can start several foundations, Bumiputra Foundation, along the way of the wakaf principle, and later on merge and nationalize and broaden it with the contributions of the corporate sector under CSR and so on. So this should start from the bottom and move up, I think.
All right, thank you very much, sir. That was the Professor Emeritus Dr. Berjaya Bardai, the Provost of Malaysia University of Science and Technology, or MUST. And we thank you again for joining us for today's episode. By the way, if you want to learn more about episodes such as this, just head on to Astro AWANI and find out more there.
Dibawakan oleh penaja utama jelajah jiwa SME, Unify Business, rakan digital pilihan anda.
Malaysia perlu bergerak daripada sekadar menjadi pusat pembuatan kepada sebuah negara pencipta teknologi chip sendiri yang mampu memberi nilai tambah lebih tinggi kepada dunia. Kerajaan bersetuju untuk mempertimbangkan agar pengusaha bot di Sabah dan Sarawak turut layak menerima subsidi petrol RON 95. Sabah kini memiliki 2 tapak rizab biosfera susulan pengiktirafan diberikan kepada kinabatangan oleh UNESCO.
Belum tukar box lagi ke? Sebab nanti dah tak boleh nak stream on demand. Tak ada kontrak. Pasang pun percuma. Boleh menang barangan perkakas rumah dan pelbagai hadiah menarik.
Astro Ultra Box ni sangat senang digunakan sebab walaupun hujan, saya dapat menonton dengan tanpa gangguan.